All right, we're going to make some bread pudding. So we need to make sure that we have a couple of things ready to go first. We want to take one loaf of our challah bread and we want to dice it up. And we want it to be reasonably small cubes. You don't want giant pieces, okay? So you're going to get that all diced out, Christ and everything. And one of the things that's important is that when you have a loaf of bread, it's long. And everyone wants to cut it into slices and then dice it up. But it's way more efficient if you slice it long ways and then dice. And then you can do it much quicker, much more efficient than making little slices. So slice your loaf long ways and then dice. So we've got our bread ready to go. It's all diced up and ready in a bowl. And then what we want to do is we want to start with heating our cream. So we're going to throw the cream into a pot. I'm going to turn our heat on. And we're just going to throw it on high. Okay, so we have our cream, and we're going to add half of our sugar to that cream. So you can just eyeball that. Toss in about half. Give that a quick stir. This is going to help prevent the cream from burning. But what we're trying to do here is just bring it to a boil. So bread pudding is a great dessert that uses up old bread, and you can use up anything. Croissants, sandwich bread, multigrain bread, whatever. Challah, brioche, they're just a really rich, delicious version of bread pudding. The other thing we want to do is take our eggs and our egg yolk and put them into a bowl. And we're going to take the other half of the sugar and we're going to whisk it in here. I'm just going to use my spatula, but you could use a whisk. It doesn't really matter. But you don't want to do this until you're ready to start cooking. Okay, you don't want to add eggs to sugar unless you're ready to use them, because sugar is something called hygroscopic and it sucks moisture out of other things. So if you stir this too soon, you're going to find that you have little hard lumps of egg. So just once you get your cream on, get those two things mixed together. We're just going to stir it to combine. Once our cream gets hot, just to the point, just before it boils, we're going to temper it in to our eggs. And this is where the custard part is starting to happen. You also want to have a strainer handy. So I've got a strainer here. I'm going to push my bread a little bit out of the way. Push my cherries out of the way. I'm going to put the strainer over top of the chocolate. So I've put the chocolate in a bowl. The bowl is nice and dry, and that's really important when we're talking about chocolate. You don't want to mix it with any water. And we're just going to put our strainer over top. So I can see my cream is starting to steam, but I want to get it just a little hotter than it is right now. So I want it just about to simmer. So maybe I'll give it just a quick stir. The steam's really starting to happen now, but it's still not quite ready to go. There we go. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's just little tiny bubbles forming, so that's perfect. I'm going to turn it off. You don't ever want to walk away when you have cream or milk on the stove, because it boils over very quickly. So now that we've got that, I'm just going to push my burner out of the way a little bit. Give me a little bit more room. Okay, now we're just going to start pouring in our hot cream into our eggs, but you want the eggs to be moving the whole time. So I'm going to stir them just a little bit. Of course, my bowl's going to spin. So give it a little bit of a stir and just drizzle in slowly the hot liquid. Once you get your cream about halfway in, you can start pouring faster. Okay, but nice and slow at the start because we don't want to cook the eggs yet. So there we have our custard mix started. It's not cooked yet. We're going to bake it in the oven with the bread. So we just have it all nice. The sugar's all dissolved. All of our eggs are mixed up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain it over my chocolate. And this is to pick up any hard bits of egg that maybe got overcooked, any dry bits that sucked up from the sugar. can see I have just a little bit here at the bottom, and I don't want to push that through the strainer. Okay, I'm just going to pull that to the side. Now, I'm just going to leave this sitting for a couple of minutes so that the chocolate can start to melt before I start to stir it. Sometimes if you stir too soon, you can separate the chocolate and it's going to get sort of a little bit oily. So while I'm waiting for that, I just want to talk about the pans. You want to make sure that they're ready to go. So I have 2 pans here and they're both lined with paper. I don't know if you can see it. I have the paper coming up just a tiny bit to the edge. This is for 2 reasons. 1, so that it helps you lift this out when you go to portion it. Or 2, if we were selling it to a guest, they would know that there's paper inside. The other thing you want to do is just give it a quick light rub down with oil or a little pan spray. You don't need to go crazy, but you want to hit the corners because that's where it tends to stick. So just a little bit of pan spray there. So our pans are ready to go. So we're just going to let this sit for 1 more second. And then what I'm going to start to do is just stir gently, gently in the middle. Little tiny circles. This technique is super important when we're talking about ganache, which is sort of what we're making here. But we're not making a true ganache because there's too much liquid. So we're just going to give it a bit of a stir. Wait for the chocolate to come, melt it all around. Give it a really good stir to make sure you're getting everything off the bottom. So it looks a little chocolate chippy, but that'll actually resolve itself as it sits a little bit longer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bread and our custard, and we're going to pour the custard all over the top of the bread. Okay, and then just with your spatula, give it a bit of a fold so that everything is well covered. Okay, we're just going to leave that to soak for about 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to put it in a pan. Okay, so our mixture has been sitting for about 10 minutes. The bread has soaked up all of the custard that it can. And so now we're going to start portioning it into the pans. So each of these pans should take about 500 grams. So you just want to turn on your scale. Oh, wait. Ooh. Don't forget to add your cherries. I pre-chopped the cherries a little bit, so I just want to throw them in. I cut each piece of cherry into about 1/4. You just want to make sure that it's nice and evenly distributed before you portion. All right, there we go. So now we're going to portion it at about 500 grams a pan. It's 500 in that one. Number 2. Perfect. Okay, so I've got that all portioned out. Now I just want to level the top a little bit. I do like the sort of rustic peak look of the bread. Like I don't like it super squished to the bottom, but you do want to sort of press it into the corners a little bit. Just so that it sits nice and flat. So press it down just a little. That. Do the same with this one. Make sure it's nice and even all the way across. Excellent. So we're going to pop these in the oven at about 350 until a pick put in the center comes out clean. So when I put my pick in, I don't want it to come out looking like this, nice and wet. It's going to come out maybe with some wet breadcrumbs, but this bulk of it won't be there. So I'm going to say I'm going to start looking after about 20 minutes, but it could take up to about 40 minutes to bake, depending on your oven. So we're going to pop those in the oven and we'll check back on them when they're done. Okay, so here our bread puddings come out of the oven. You can see it's nice and baked. There's no wet spots, there's no visible puddles. And when I test it with my thermometer, I'm not really looking for a temperature, but when I stick my thermometer in and I pull it back out again, you can see that there's nothing left behind on here. That means it's done. So this is ready to go. It's really important that you let this cool all the way before you package it. Otherwise it'll get steamy and soft and soggy and wet. So let it come to room temperature all by itself, and then you can package it up however you like. This is great served with some creme anglaise, maybe some ice cream. A sorbet would be nice, depending on the type of bread pudding. This one's really chocolatey and rich, so maybe a nice bright raspberry sorbet would be a delicious addition. It's a great dessert, and it's a great way to use up bread.